Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. So today's going to be a two-parter. I had planned on doing a podcast yesterday and then had some car troubles and had to get those fixed. And so today we're going to do the exact podcast I was going to do yesterday and then do the one that I was planning on doing today. So part one, we're going to look at a busy day in the National Hockey League from a couple of days ago and all the news that has gone down there. Plus, the NFL preview continues, looking at the best players in the National Football League and the most talented teams in the National Football League. So that's what's coming up on the show today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. So the National Hockey League got very interesting over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of it thanks to the St. Louis Blues, who get their guys, as Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg are on their way to St. Louis. I am quite surprised at how this all went down. I am quite surprised that the Edmonton Oilers let both guys go. You have Broberg, $4.5 million contract. We said the other day, that's one you can pass on, right? Not without some stress because of what the potential is for the player, how the team is constantly pushing to try to get more defensemen. And so it's not an easy, just like, yeah. But it is difficult. And that price tag on a team that is going to be up against the cap does make it a little bit easier. Also, he has spent exactly 0% of his career as a $4.5 million player, right? So you can, I think, pretty easily, like, again, I say easily. It's not easy, because this is, I think, a player who can be quite good. And there is absolutely a world where he is worth more than $4.5 million, even by next year. And so that is kind of the risk that you take. It's a tricky spot that the Blues put Edmonton in. I think more teams should do this exact sort of a thing. Maybe not on the upper echelon guys, unless you just fucking want them and want to give it a go. But I do think like making that sort of a push is a smart move to try to make. Also, I did make a mistake the other day. They can't trade him. I thought like, yeah, 4.5, you can use that as a cap filler thing, while also sending a young player off. It actually in some ways makes him more tradable. Well, you literally can't for a year. So that muddies the waters on it slightly. So overall, there's a world where you regret it. 100% there's a world where you regret it. But I also think that this was the one that you could kind of explain away. I don't get the Holloway one. I think that this is a kid that is just scratching the surface on what he can be. And again, I've called a couple of his games. I've interviewed him a couple of times. I like the dude. He doesn't know who I am. Like, we're not friends or anything like that. But it's just like, chat with the guy a couple of times. You think he's dope. But just from a hockey watching standpoint, I think this is a good hockey player. And while there might not be an opportunity on the Oilers, given the additions that they have made, him at under $3 million is a no-brainer to me. He's the type of potential breakout player that could help this team out and get them over the finish line. Like if he can reach the potential that he has and become not necessarily a game changer or anything like that, but become a very good scoring player, you add that to the depth of this group, and all of a sudden, like, maybe that is the difference between a game 6 and or a game 7 loss and a game 7 win, or not even having to get to a game 7 and winning one of the first 3 games that you play in the Stanley Cup final. I think that this is a player that you not necessarily build around seems over dramatic. But this is the type of a player that you just don't let go for free, especially for $3 million. Like that felt very questionable to me from the Oilers standpoint. But this whole thing represents, I think, a bigger picture for Edmonton and a bigger frustration that fans probably should have and might already have. If these two are going to be worth a second and a third round pick to you now, they should not have been worth a first round pick to you then. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have been first round picks. I'm asking, what the fuck is Edmonton doing using them? With McDavid and Draisaitl on the team, you are in a window to push for a championship. Probably several. Start with one, but probably several. These are picks that should have been used as trade chips to help bolster the roster in those previous seasons. When you are making these pushes, the fact that they are drafting in the first round this much is mind-boggling to me. And like, even, okay, so if you're not going to trade that pick that year, well, now you have Holloway and now you have Broberg. And sometimes draft picks can be kind of like cars, like they lose 50% of their value once they drive off of the lot. Like, oh, well, we have a first round pick. Okay, well, let's trade that first round pick. Hey, that first round pick is Morgan Klimchuk. I don't know why Klimchuk's getting a drive by in this, but you know what I mean. Hey, that first round pick's Morgan Klimchuk. Okay, yeah, loses it a little bit. And so I understand, but with Holloway and with Broberg, there was I think, and it might even still be a view that there is a potential upside there. So those again are absolutely trade chips that this team should have been using to bolster this roster and get them NHL ready. And I understand, like, what you want is a sustained program, right? Like you want kind of the Pittsburgh model feels a little whatever, but I mean you're following it when you're the Oilers, and there is kind of a straight line comparison to, well, you got Crosby and then you got Malkin, and well, okay, well, you have McDavid and Draisaitl. That seems like it's almost too obvious. And when they started with Crosby, it was like Darren and Recchi and all those veteran players who were in there. And then as they kind of age out, and as Crosby salary increases, Malkin, Letang, all those guys start to get paid, then you start to need that second wave of younger players. And all of a sudden Gensel comes in and helps you win championships, and Rust and all of those guys. And it's the young group comes in. People do kind of forget there was a real big chunk there where Pittsburgh wasn't doing a damn thing. And that wasn't great. But you can kind of see what Edmonton is trying to go for, where we have all these top level guys. When we're going to be paying them, yes, we want to have some players on ELCs coming in and being able to contribute so that we can kind of just keep this line moving once these guys get paid. Well, in that case, then you don't give them away for a second and a third when one of them is going to be making more than $3 million. Like that, whatever. It is a misjudgment in development, misjudgment in scouting or something, but something messed up. If you're using a first round pick on Dylan Holloway and then are okay with losing him rather inexpensively for second and third round picks, like it doesn't work like that. And so also along with that, I kind of got sidetracked there. You got to win one first with these guys. And I think every year where you're like, okay, well, conference finals, well, didn't work. And then other than that, and it's a second round this and whatever. And this is, again, a weird conversation to be having after they just went to the Cup final, but it has probably taken too long to do that with Connor McDavid, sorry. And there's obviously a lot of very talented teams in the NHL. It's not supposed to be easy to get to the Stanley Cup final, but you do kind of get bored on third base when you get Connor McDavid, and are supposed to be able to build around it. And so these are assets, I think, that you have to use to stabilize or to solidify your team around Connor McDavid now. Let's not worry about 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, because those cats could leave. And if they do, you're going to be dog shit anyway. And that's not a knock on Edmonton. That's everyone, right? Like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and all those guys, even just as they've aged out, it's been tough to kind of keep that up. And so once they're gone, that team's going to be bad for a while. And so you kind of just accept that. Like it's tough to do like a 20-year run where you're all just kind of awesome. There's going to be some ebbs and flows, especially when you are relying on players like that. And so accept that, look, like this is our window now. We need to be going for it now. We have the best player in the world. Let's make a bit of a push for it, use these picks as capital and trades, or use these young players as capital and trades. And they've done that once with some of these picks, but you look at it, since drafting Bouchard in 2019, which finally worked out this year, but since drafting Bouchard in 18, they drafted Broberg, who's played 81 games, Holloway, who's played 89, Xavier Bargault, who you just did your guy's not playing, my guy's not playing, let's switch them and see if they play. Reed Schaefer, who was who was a piece of the Ekholm trade, so that's good. And now you have Sam O'Reilly in the first round. That is a gigantic waste of assets. You have had now, I guess that would be 6 years worth of assets, right? Broberg, Holloway, Bourgeau, sorry, Schaefer, and O'Reilly. So in 18, they traded one of those picks. Probably in the Ekholm trade. So you have 6 years worth of assets. You use 2 of them to make a trade that solidifies your roster. But then, other than that, with all due respect to those guys, they have contributed none to, for the most part, to the winning and success. Holloway, bits and pieces here and there, and some big goals in the playoffs, but for the most part, he has not made a difference. And that just feels like a huge waste of assets when you are looking to make a push to be a Stanley Cup contending team. If you're going to be making those picks, you better be getting players who are going to help you or develop into that in quicker than 5 or 6 years. I am stunned how often this team has been drafting in the first round as of late. And again, to be fair, Schaefer has slipped as part of the Ekholm trade. But aside from that, from 6 years worth of draft picks, you have first round picks, I should say. You have 168 games played, 11 goals, a second, a third, Jake Chiasson, and now Sam O'Reilly, who, by the way, you gave up next year's first to get. It is top 10 protected, but that's not the point. How do you give up another trade chip right now to go get a player who isn't going to help you out for a few years? Sam O'Reilly ain't playing on the Edmonton Oilers next year. And the Edmonton Oilers' sole focus in life should be on winning a championship next year. And farm system, cupboards, whatever, be fucked, man. You have to win a championship this year. And so, again, to get basically nothing out of 6 years worth of first round draft picks, and then move another draft pick to get one that you use on something that isn't going to help you for 3 or 4 years, probably, is just a gigantic waste. And again, I hate talking about players like this, but it is a gigantic failure of asset management. And so you really do see, when you kind of look under the hood with the Edmonton Oilers, that last year's success was kind of more in spite of management than it was because of it. And Stan Bowman, I don't know if he should have that job. I have a fairly strong lean toward one side. You can probably guess that. But boy, the bar is not set high out in Edmonton for moves that should have been made. Like, it is, and this isn't even like, I know Oilers fans and I have had some back and forths. That's what happens when you're the radio guy in Calgary, or a radio guy in Calgary. I shouldn't say I am far from the radio guy in Calgary. But when you are a radio guy in Calgary, you're going to have some back and forths on it. But this isn't look at the Oilers. I'm saying, no, Oiler fans, you should be pissed about this too. I don't know why I'm so fired up, but you should be fired up about this too, because this sucks, man. Shifting gears to a different Canadian team, the Montreal Canadiens go out and acquire Patrick Laine. And it's so interesting to see the reaction to this. On the one hand, the Blue Jackets needed to attach a second-round pick to Laine to move him. On the other hand, Laine could be the last piece Montreal needs to really push toward a playoff spot. And I actually think both points can be true, and both have merit. Laine has been going through some shit, and he has some issues out in Columbus, and clearly didn't want to be there anymore. So his trade value was next to nothing. But when he is on, he is exactly what this Habs team needs. A pure finisher with Caulfield, Doc, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, and eventually, probably pretty soon, Demidov. You have a team that I think is really one kind of star-ish away. And like, Caulfield's really good. Suzuki's really good. There is a chance that Demidov is the missing piece. I don't think Laine is like, okay, missing piece championship team, but he is the exact type of complementary piece that the Montreal Canadiens needed. And so if this can work out, and if he can work out whatever issues he has, this is a major move for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think, if nothing else, this is a signal to the team, to the fan base, and to the rest of the National Hockey League that this is not going to be a team that is going to be in rebuilding mode or whatever. This is now a team that is in push for progression mode. And I love that for Montreal. So I think this is a really, really smart move for Columbus. It frees up some cap space. It frees up a roster spot. We'll see what they kind of push for out in Columbus, but it kind of alleviates a headache, I suppose, and kind of puts a wrap on things out there. But for Montreal, I love this move. If it doesn't work out, you get a second round pick, and they got a ton of cap space anyway. So and it's only a couple of years, right? And you can end up doing the same thing with Laine, but these things tend to work out, and the Habs have done a beautiful job of kind of putting together this team and coming out of this rebuild now. And so I think the big question left there is the goaltending. So that's the story from the NHL in a surprisingly busy week from the National Hockey League. Let's shift gears now as the NFL season rapidly approaches, and the NFL preview continues today as we look at the best players from the National Football League and most talented teams in the NFL going into this year. All right, let's continue. Continue works. Let's look at the top players in the National Football League. I think the start of every season is a good time to just, okay, let's reset. Let's see who are the actual guys in the NFL coming into this season. We will start at number 10. And a new player on this list, which we have a few of, it is Max Crosby. What he has been able to do with the Vegas Raiders, and there is some bias on my behalf, of course, but what he has been able to do as just kind of at times, and I am not saying this hyperbolically, at times, the only good player on this defense, what he was able to do in that sense is really, really impressive. And it is a real testament to like the skill, the motor, the work ethic that this guy has. But he is a game changer all on his own on that defense. And I'm interested to see what he does now with Christian Watkins as the man in the middle, getting some pressure from there. I think that's a really interesting tandem that they have. But he himself is an absolute game wrecker on the defensive line. And so I think he deserves to be in this spot. At number 9, it is TJ Watt. You see how important he was to this defense when they lost him last season and they just couldn't stop anything. And it ended up kind of just like ruining their year. I think TJ Watt is like genuinely one of the best defensive players in the league. Oddly enough, a lot of defensive players on this list. But again, he is someone who insane athletic gifts combined with a ridiculous work ethic has led him to be someone who, again, just on his own can be a game wrecker. At number 8, it is Chris Jones. He reestablished this in the postseason last year, and really throughout the season last year. He was on a mission to get that new contract. He gets it. It is very deserving, and he is the anchor for a team that really built itself up on the defense last year. So Chris Jones gets it. At 7, it's Trent Williams. There will probably be a time where he isn't on this list. That is not this year. He is so important on the offensive line in what they are doing out in San Francisco, giving whatever quarterback they have time and giving some run lanes to Christian McCaffrey. So Trent Williams gets on this list. At 6, it is Justin Jefferson. He is not going as the first wide receiver in NFL drafts or fantasy football drafts because of the quarterback situation around him. But I don't think there is a question that he is the most talented wide receiver in the National Football League right now. At 5, it is Christian McCaffrey. We have seen now what health was denying us of at times because he was oft injured as someone of his size and stature may be, but he has been able to really maximize his gifts out in San Francisco and can kind of just do it all. Pass catching, excellent as a runner as well. He is such a dynamic weapon that I almost feel like we don't appreciate it enough how good he is as a running back. At 4, it is the MVP, Lamar Jackson. He moves way up on this list. I thought it was more coaching and game planning that cost them in the AFC Championship game, but this is still someone who has taken some great leaps in his career. The running aspect of it, a lot of people do it now. No one does it as well as him, and I think he has made some really great strides as a passer as well. So he comes in at number 4 on this list. At number 3, this was a real close battle between 3 and 2. It was Myles Garrett. He is such a freak on the defensive line and just gets after the pass rusher so well. Phenomenal in the run stopping. Just everything you want. He just checks all of those boxes. At 2, it's Micah Parsons. There isn't a whole lot that separates them. I think Parsons just being a touch quicker while still being about as ferocious a pass rusher gives him the edge for me. But if you wanted to flip them, I don't really have much of an argument. And in at number 1, I know he didn't get it on the NFL list, but to me, I don't think there's any question. Like when I start to make this list, I put Patrick Mahomes at number one, and then I fill out the rest after that. He is the most talented quarterback I have seen in the history of the NFL. Again, like makes all the throws, mobile as heck, reads defenses so well, and he has this brilliant mix of creativity, intelligence, and athletic ability. And obviously has put the work in to maximize all of it. I think it is clear he is the best player in the NFL this season. So those are the best players. But who are the best teams? Or at least the most talented. Here are the teams with the most talent in the NFL going into the 2024-2025 season. Again, I'm not saying that these are the teams that are going to win the Super Bowl. Injuries happen, chemistry, whatever, schedule, all of that. But when you just put it down on paper, who's got the best? At 5, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Having Patrick Mahomes helps us out greatly, obviously. They are a number one receiver away from probably being number one on this list. But Pacheco is developing. Rashee Rice didn't have the best offseason, that's for sure, but it is a talented football player when able to do so. But I think the real thing that puts these guys still on this list is the talent of this defense. When you have Chris Jones, again, in that top 10, when you have Trent McDuffie and some of these other guys, that this defense really helped get this team over the hump last year and kind of kept them around in the regular season. Not that there was much of a push from the Raiders or the Broncos or certainly the Chargers last year, but kept these guys as one of the like upper echelon teams while the offense was figuring some stuff out. And then by the time they got to the postseason, it was wraps for everyone. So they come in at number 5. At 4, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They obviously lost some last year on the defensive side, but I think they had a very, very good draft. They made some smart moves this offseason, and so they keep that talent up on the defensive side. I think that the offensive line loses quite a bit with no Jason Kelce, but still has a couple of the best offensive linemen in the league. And then to add Saquon Barkley to an already ridiculously talented skill position set to go along with the incredibly talented Jalen Hurts, this is still a very talented team. And if they put it together, they should be there at the end. Just ahead of them, never thought I'd see them on this list, the Detroit Lions. I was admittedly a Lions non-believer last year and kept that up all the way to the AFC Championship game where I was eventually proven right. But I think there is a slight bit of projection with Jameson Williams in here, but even if not, Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Gibbs, as the skill position players are tremendous. On the offensive line, Penei Sewell is dealing with some injury issues now, but this is probably the best O-line in the NFL. Aiden Hutchinson is a legitimate game breaker on the defensive side, and then I think a couple of smart moves in the draft and over the last couple of years in building up this defense. It's not an elite defense, I don't think by any stretch, but it is, I think, good enough to get this team on this list. At 2, it's the Miami Dolphins. They lost a lot this offseason, but they had a lot this season. And you still have Devon Achane, who is primed to take a big step this year. Tyreek Hill, who I don't like saying nice things about, but is what he is. Jalen Waddle as well. It's wild to me that Waddle is the 3rd fastest guy on this team. I think people are really underestimating Tua. The issue is the offensive line for sure, but then the defense just got hurt last year, and that really was what ended up costing them. They were a division winner last year if everyone on that defense doesn't get hurt. Now they are back for a full season. You would presume some health, and so I think the defense, again, is something that kind of puts them over the hump here. But at number 1, it's the San Francisco 49ers, and they got an insane amount of injury luck a season ago, and that certainly helps things greatly when you are building a championship team. But the offensive weapons are the best in the NFL. The offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. And defensively, they have playmakers and game wreckers across the board. Like they check every box that you would want. And so to me, the San Francisco 49ers are absolutely the most talented team in the NFL this season. All right, that is going to do it. Like I said, this is part 1. So that is technically the Tuesday podcast. And so hope you enjoyed it. We will be back here with part 2 in just a matter of moments. Make sure you follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. If you are watching, make sure you like this. If you are listening, make sure you review it. Subscribe in both places, and I'll talk to all of you in a little bit. Bye.